Okay, so 6.1, we're going to be looking at the general form, which you see at the top, and 6.2, and then 6.1 we went over, which was y equals mx plus b. Okay, in this case they use c, just it doesn't matter too much, but they use c just because they have the general form here, and b is already being used. Okay. So again, a quick review: slope-intercept form looks like this, and then the m represents the slope. The c here in this case represents the y-intercept. Where does the slope hit the y-intercept when x is 0? And then the x and y are just at any point on the slope, right? So, and then, you can, if you have an x point, you can solve for y. If you have a y point, you can solve for the corresponding x. In the general form, everything is on one side, okay? So they shifted everything to one side, and you just do that by basic algebra. So, we'll look at examples, but you shift everything, the y over here, negative y, put it over here, and then you just got to make sure whatever the coefficient next to the x is, right, is a whole number. Okay, it has to be a whole number. It can't be a fraction. It has to be positive, and that's about it. So x needs to be a whole number and positive. You don't have to worry about the other numbers, but they'll kind of work themselves out. But y and c also need to be integers, and y and x can't be 0. But you won't get equations like that. So just remember the coefficient next to x needs to be a whole number, and it needs to be positive. So let's jump into it. Okay, so 6.2 general form. Yeah, they do a little bit of review stuff here, but we're going to go into the first example. Okay, so example 1 right here in the bottom left. So they gave us the equation in slope-intercept form. You can see it's y equals mx plus b. Quick review. In this equation, we can right off the bat see that the slope is negative 2 over 3x, and the y-intercept is 6. Okay, now we need to write in the general form like this. Okay, everything on one side. So how do we do this? First, again, x needs to be positive, right? Um, Actually, even before that, with the step that they did, x also needs, the coefficient next to x needs to be a whole number. Okay, you can see it's a fraction here. So how do we get rid of this fraction? You multiply it by whatever its denominator is. So you're gonna multiply x by 3. But if you multiply this part by 3, you have to multiply everything by 3 to keep it the same equation, right? You can't just do one thing. If you just multiply this by 3, then the equation will change. So you got your y equals negative 2 over 3x plus 6. And we're going to multiply the right side by 3. So basically the fraction, the denominator cancels out, and you're left with the negative 2. And then 3 times 6 gives us 6, 12, 18. And then you have to do 3 times y as well. So that's how they got the equation. You can see the steps here. But then you get 3y equals negative 2x plus 18. So this should be kind of straightforward. Now what do you have to do? Remember, x can't be negative. So we need to move the x to the left. So negative 2x, you would have plus 2x. And you also need to move the y because one side of the equation needs to be 0. So plus 18, so minus 18. And then that's what they did here. They did it on both sides. And you can see 2x plus 3y minus 18 equals 0. So now from the slope-intercept form, we got the general form. And it looks like, you can see how this looks like ax plus by plus c, or in this case minus c, equals 0. Okay. The equation in general form, yeah, that's just written like that. Okay. Let's go into example 2. For example 2, for the linear equation, negative 2x minus 3y minus 6 equals 0, use the intercepts to graph the line. Okay, so when it says use the intercepts to graph the line, whenever you have this form, the cool thing is, see the x and y value? This is just a point on the slope. So we can substitute, plug in, say y is equal to 0. And when y is equal to 0, that gives you the x-intercept, right? So where does the x point hit on the graph when y is 0, which is just going to be on the horizontal line, okay? So when you plug in 0 here for y, and then you solve for x, and then you get the x-intercept, and that's what we do here, okay? So determine the x-intercept by substituting y equals 0, then solve for x. So you just plug it in, they gave us the equation, and now you just do some basic algebra. So this will obviously go away because anything times 0 is 0. So 2x minus 6 is equal to 0. And then we're shifting over the 6 to the other side to isolate the x, so plus 6 on both sides, right? and then 2x equals 6, so we got that, and now you have to divide by 2 because it's multiplying by 2, and then we get x equals 3. So this point is x is 3 and y is 0. That's the x-intercept. Okay. Once you do that, you need to do the same thing to find the y-intercept. So how do you find the y-intercept? You substitute x as 0. Okay. So why do you substitute x as 0 here? It's because at the 0 point, that's where it's going to hit this vertical line, right? So that's going to be the y-intercept. So when x is 0, so you can see they found it at this point. X is 0, the y-intercept hits here. Okay. So you get your original equation that we had at the starting, and now we're going to plug 0 for x, and then basically go through and you isolate for the y. Okay. Just do some basic algebra. You can kind of, well, we'll go through this together, I guess. So substitute 0, you get negative 3y minus 6 equals 0. Move the 6 to the other side by adding 6 to both sides. So negative 6 equals 3y. And they also flip the signs around as well. That's just by you're dividing by -1 in each side. And then finally, to get rid of the 3y, you need to do the opposite of multiplying by 3. You divide by 3 on both sides, and you get y equals -2. Okay. So now we got our 2 points. Why do we do this? Because with our 2 points, we can plot them on our graph, and we can connect the lines, and you'll get your slope. Okay. The y-intercept is -2. The line crosses the y-axis at the point 0, -2. Okay. So we plot this point here. So the y-intercept, so when x is 0, y is -2. Make a little dot. And then the x-intercept when y is 0, when y is 0, x is 3. So 1, 2, 3. So you get this point, 3, 0. You plot the second point, is 0, -2. And then you connect the lines. Just use a ruler. And then that's it. So look at this example. Consider the line equation 4x plus 5y minus 20 equals 0. Use two methods to graph the line. One method is to just convert it into the slope-intercept form and use that, just going backwards, which will go in the next example. The other way is to just substitute 0 for x to find the y-intercept, find 1 point, then substitute 0 for the y to find the x-intercept. You get our 2 points, plot them on the graph, and just use a ruler to connect them. Right? Yeah. All right, example 3. Identify the intercepts of horizontal or vertical lines. Okay, so this is just going to be the same sort of thing, but maybe I guess you could say it's like special cases when you get horizontal and vertical lines. Sketch each linear relation and identify the intercepts, then state the domain and range. Okay. Okay, so for this one, y minus 3 equals 0. Okay, so we basically for y minus 3 equals 0, you can just move over the 3, so you're going to get y equals 3. So this is like the slope-intercept form, right? So when x is 0, basically y is 3. How does that look like? It's just going to be a straight line, because there's no, I guess, the slope is 0 in this case, right? So it's kind of like 6.1. You just move over the 3, and then x is 0, y is 3, so you get this horizontal line. Okay. What about the other case? Okay, what if there's no y? That just is like saying y is 0. Okay, you move over for part B, we're going to move the negative or the 4.5 over to get x equals -4.5. So x is -4.5, and there's no y. Whenever y is 0, that means the slope is going to be a straight vertical, right, going up and down. So pretty straightforward. And C, y is equal to 0. Okay, zoom it in a bit. So when y is equal to 0, again, you should know that this is going to be a horizontal line. And at what point? Where y is 0, which is just going to be like the original axis line. So it represents the entire graph on the x-axis, this whole line right here. Yeah, hopefully that made sense. I'm doing vertical and horizontal lines. So we'll look at 1 or 2 word problems. Okay. So Spencer has a 66 gigabyte of disk space available on his laptop. That's not too much to fill with his television shows and movies he purchased online to watch while traveling. Suppose a 1-hour show uses 1.1 gigabyte of disk space and a movie uses 4.4 gigabytes. Write in a linear equation that represents the numbers of television shows, T, and movies M that Spencer can store on his laptop. So really, we're just going to write an equation You can write in the equation y equals mx plus b, and then we can change that to general form if that's what they want us to do later, but we'll just focus on A right now. So, a TV show takes up 1.1 gigabytes of space, and a movie takes 4.4 gigabytes of space. That's the information that we need to extract from this whole paragraph. Everything else doesn't really matter. Well, eventually they also want us to use these letters for the variables. T is going to be for the TV shows and M for the movies. Okay, so how do we do that? Okay, so what is T? So 1.1 times T, so times the number of movies, right? Plus 4.4 M, M is the movies, right? Is going to equal 66 gigabytes. So you're going to have to write the equation in this format from this information. So you need 1.1 gigabytes is per movie, per TV show. So you multiply by T depending on how many you get, and 4.4 you multiply by M depending on how many movies you get, and the whole add them together need to add up to 66 gigabytes. Okay. Okay. From here, they want us to write it in general form, I believe. Okay. To write it to general form, just think of T as the X value and M as the Y value. You could have done it the other way around, I guess. It'll still give you a correct answer, but in this case, if we take T as kind of like the X, yeah, you know that the A value, the coefficient, needs to be a whole number. Okay, so a decimal number or a fraction, we need to convert it to a whole number. So how do you make 1.1 into a whole number? You multiply it by 10, right, to get rid of this decimal. So you multiply by T by 10, you have to multiply everything by 10. So that's how you get 11, 44, 660. Okay. Okay, write the number of the television shows. Okay, so now we got T plus, 11T plus 44M equals 660. And now they want us to reduce it in lowest terms. So one number goes into all three terms here, and you can see that 11 will go into it. So 11 divided by 11T gives you T, 44 divided by 11 gives you 4M, and 660 divided by 11 will give you 60. Okay, so now we got this equation extracted from the paragraph here, T plus 4M equals 60. Okay, so if there's 5 movies here, then you can solve for, 5 television shows, you plug 5 for T, and then you just figure out how much space he has for the movies. Or if you want 8 movies, you plug in 8 for M, and you can solve for T to figure out how many television shows he'll be able to have. Okay. So second part, to determine the t-intercepts. What was the question for B? Determine the t-intercept of the graph of the linear equation. What does the t-intercept represent? So before we even go into it, what does the t-intercept represent here? So that's going to be, what if he has only television shows, right? No movies. So you're going to solve for that. So when m is 0, that's what they're doing, using our equation that we just came with. When m is 0, when there's no movies, what is t? So it's going to simply be 60, right? Because that's how much space he has, I guess. So the t-intercept is 60, so if Spencer stores no movies, he can store 60 television shows. Okay, to determine the m-intercept, we have to see first. What is the m-intercept? What does the m-intercept represent? And then, if you think about it, it's pretty much the same idea as B. M-intercept is going to be, what if there's no television shows? What if T is 0? How many movies can you store? All right. So they're going to do the same thing here. So they can plug in 0 for T in our equation. The hard part is just getting the equation, I guess. And then now you just solve for M, right? So 4M equals 60, divide by 4 on both sides. M is equal to 15. Okay. Okay, last little, oh yeah, it is last little bit. If Spencer stores 16 television shows, how many movies does he have space for? Okay, so now instead of plugging in a 0, the intercept, you just plug in 16 for T, and then you solve for the M to find the movies, right? So that's what we're doing. You get our equations that we simplified to, okay? And if you didn't simplify it, it's just gonna be a little bit more work. That's why you do simplify it. So 16 plus 4M equals 60. And then now you're going to isolate for the m. So get rid of the 16, right? Minus 16 on both sides. Then you get 4m equals 44. Divide by 4 on both sides. M equals 11. So if you store 16 television shows, he has room for 11 movies. Okay. All right, so that's pretty much it for 6.2. Here's a little bit of a review. So, the general form is right here. when you get a general form, you can find the x-intercept by plugging in 0 for the y, and you solve for the x. You can find the y-intercept by plugging in 0 for the x, right, and solve for y. Did I say that already? If the x-intercept, you plug 0 for the y and solve for the x, and then the y-intercept, you plug in 0 for the x and solve for the y. Okay, and then once you have these 2 points, right, this is when x is 3, when y is 0, the x-intercept, you plot that, and you plot the y-intercept when x is 0, y is 1.5, and then you just connect the lines to get the slope. Okay. Remember, when x equals and there's no y, it's going to be a vertical line, right? So there's no y-intercept, doesn't hit it. And also, when there's no x, it's going to be a horizontal line. Okay. So 3y equals 0 is the same thing as y equals 0, and this is going to be flat on the original x axes, right? Okay. And that's about it. So I'll post these 2 videos, 6.1, 6.2, which I guess if you're listening, it's already posted. And check the class notebook for the homework.